guess I'd like to speak predominantly about feline heartworm today, but and that will be the case. But I guess you can't understand feline heartworm unless you understand canine heartworm first. So I'm going to introduce by talking a little bit about dogs before we get to cats. And I suppose maybe we should do a show of hands as market. Who has diagnosed heartworm in their shelters? Yeah, so quite a few. So heartworm is definitely still out there. So heartworm, of course, is the common name for Filaria immitus, the canine heartworm, and the dog is the definitive host. So I guess cats are kind of accidental hosts, and perhaps we could consider them dead-end hosts, in that they're unlikely to be spreading heartworm. And of course, heartworm is spread through mosquitoes. So it's quite common for people to say, well, my dog's not at risk because it doesn't see any other dogs. And of course, that makes no difference because the mosquitoes are happy to travel and do. This slide is one that I've shamelessly stolen from the American Heartworm Society guidelines document. And there's lots of different ways of displaying the heartworm life cycle, but I particularly like this one. So I'll just spend a minute or two explaining this. I guess to spread heartworm, you need an infected dog, and that dog has to have three elements within it. It has to have adult females, adult males, and those adult males and females have to be producing babies, if you like. And those babies are known as the L1 stage, the larval stage ones, commonly known as microfilaria. So the adults live in the heart and lungs, and they could, if they're reproducing, then they're spitting out thousands upon thousands of these microfilaria, which are circulating merrily in the blood. Now those microfilaria cannot turn into new heartworms, so they can't kind of add to the burden of this originally infected dog up here. What has to happen is that the microfilaria have to be sucked out of that first dog by a mosquito. They spend a couple of weeks having a holiday inside the mosquito. Who knew that mosquitoes live so long? But in fact, they live for many months in some species. So they spend a couple of weeks inside the mosquito, transitioning from the L1 to the L3 stage, and then they have to be, re-injected. So a mosquito bites another dog, or could bite the same dog, I guess, bites another dog, and transmission occurs. Now I put a big circle around this area because this is the stage that prevention is effective. So when we give our animals heartworm preventatives, what we're actually doing is killing these L3 and L4 stage larvae soon after they've been injected into the dog by the offending mosquito. And I guess that sort of circle has a limit, because if you don't kill them quick enough, they escape. And so I guess this comes to sort of compliance of giving preventatives. If you don't give your preventatives regularly enough, then you miss your opportunity to kill these newly injected larvae, and they'll be too big. They'll be too old to be killed by our preventative products, and the next time we have anything to do with them, they'll be adult and causing problems potentially in the infected dog or cat. And then I guess I've circled this up here because this is the stage that we can diagnose with our antigen tests, those little kind of kits that we use in the clinics. So when we're diagnosing, what we're doing is picking up adult females. So the kits won't pick up adult males, only pick up adult females. And then the other way we can detect heartworm is to look again for these microfilaria that are floating around in the blood. And there's a couple of different tests that you can do. The simplest thing, of course, is just to put a drop of blood under a microscope, and if there's reasonable burdens of microfilaria, you can see them there wriggling around under blood. Who's seen those? Yeah, very cool, isn't it? Very exciting when you see that. So that's the heartworm life cycle for dogs, and it's pretty much replicated for cats, except that with cats we don't tend to see microfilaria because their immune system, cats aren't the natural host. So cats tend to, wipe out microfilaria pretty quickly, so they're often microfilaria negative. And cats fight heartworm infestation all the way. So dogs are pretty tolerant of it. They've gotten used to living with heartworm, and the heartworm has, I guess, adapted the dog. But cats fight. We'll talk about the implications of that. So what's the sort of history of heartworm in Australia? There's been a lot of studies over the years, but not many recent ones. So I guess some of the early studies began in the 70s. Rick Atwell and Carol Carlisle at UQ, a couple of my lecturers from way back. And this is in the days before we had the antigen test, before the clinic testing. So they were just looking for microfilaria floating around in the blood. That was one way of detecting heartworm in a live dog. And you can see the numbers there are pretty high. And as the years roll on, studies from Sydney, this is obviously a post-mortem study. Adelaide and South Australia have always laid under misapprehension that they don't have heartworm. They probably don't have as much as the rest of the country, but pretty confident they do have it. You've got to remember too that detection of any disease is dependent upon actually looking for it. And I spend a lot of my time trying to convince Adelaide veterinarians that they should actually do some testing, rather than just sitting in the corner saying we don't have it. Sydney again, heading into the 1990s, so now we've got the antigen tests there, so we're starting to pick those up because you can have positive antigen and negative microfilaria and vice versa. Melbourne, so Victorians have heartworm too, I thought. Interestingly, there's a couple of studies out of Townsville which, these are like dingoes and wild dogs. Big percentages, in the numbers that were looked at. What about cats? So cats, not a lot of studies on cats. So a Sydney study, 2%, and a Queensland study, well actually it was a mixture of studies. This paper captured about 4 different studies and grouped them all together from mostly Brisbane and Sydney, and came up with an antibody positive. So that's not antigen, that's not microfilaria. This is antibodies where you're sort of looking for evidence in the cat of an immune response to the heartworm. And then the final one was a more recent study, again up in North Queensland, looking at wild dogs and dingoes, and that had 70% in those dogs. So I guess it's still there, and I'll show you data that supports that even more. Now the bad news is that, I guess, on that whole prevention thing that we just heard from with Mark, there's a truckload of dogs in Australia. The numbers kind of vary depending on where you get your data from, but probably 3 to about 5 million dogs. Only half of them we think are on heartworm prevention, and so the other half, I guess, are potential spreaders of the disease. So one of the questions that we were getting asked a few years ago, because Zoetis make heartworm preventatives for both cats and dogs, and I guess, as with all commercial companies, it's their role to promote our products, and vets were sort of, they were thinking, well, we haven't seen heartworm for a long time, is it still there? We're trying to convince them to keep going with their prevention. So, and I was saying, well, show us the evidence. We thought, well, we haven't got any recent evidence. A lot of those papers I've just shown you are pretty old. So in 2014, we started a website. So a little bit along the lines of Mark's Disease Watchdog website, but specifically devoted to heartworm. And every time, you can actually log on and see this data, but every time there's a case reported to the website, it creates one of these tags on the map there, and that's the website. I guess it's for veterinarians to report. And so what are we seeing? Well, if we just sort of zoom in, this part of the world, I can't remember exactly when this snapshot was taken, but it shows you that there's plenty of heartworm in this part of the world. When I was a new graduate in Toowoomba here, considered a be a cooler climate, I saw heartworm every week. It was just normal, sort of all the time. So in 2014 we kicked it off, and of course when you first start something, and Mark will be familiar with this, there's lots of enthusiasm when you first start, and you get a few people reporting, you think that's great, and then the difficulty kind of maintaining that momentum. So as of February 2018, we had almost 1,000 cases, and it has sort of stagnated. We got to that number pretty quickly, but then it has stagnated a bit, and so we gave it a bit, and you can see that most of them are in fact in Queensland, and there are some in South Australia. I like mentioning South Australia, it's so easy to do. And so we gave it a little bit of a kick along, reminded vets to report. So by May we were up to 1,180, and then by September, so just a few weeks ago, we were up to about 1,400. And again, the vast majority are in Queensland. And we were also, when we get these cases logged, we were asking people to give us basic information. We don't want to make it too onerous, otherwise they won't report. But a bit of data on prevention history. And quite early in the piece it emerged that most of these cases, actually, well 40%, I shouldn't say most, 40% came from dogs where owners thought that they were on prevention. They thought they were kind of doing the right thing. So it's very difficult to prove resistance to heartworm preventatives. So our assumption, I guess, is that this was just poor compliance. People are not giving things every month as they should. So what about cats? So cats are a bit tricky. Cats don't look like dogs with heartworm. They're kind of, it's a different disease, and I think it flies under the radar quite a bit. It's difficult to diagnose. So with dogs, of course, you do an antigen test because there's likely to be sufficient numbers of adult female worms there to find the heartworm. But and the antigen test can be used in cats. There's no problem with that. The problem with cats is because they have that strong immune response, you don't tend to get as many adult females. So the strike rate, if you like, for antigen tests is lower. So we do try and rely on antibody tests as well to try and pick up an immune response by the cat, but of course that doesn't necessarily tell you if the heartworm is still there, it could have been gone. So they're kind of easy things to do in terms of tests you can kind of just take a blood sample and then run a test with. Other things that are added to the list to kind of improve your sensitivity are doing x-rays and also doing ultrasound, which I guess perhaps takes a little bit more skill and is a bit more subjective. So basically the rules now for heartworm in cats is do all of those tests. I mean, if you find an antigen, then well, good, that's pretty good evidence. But if you don't get a positive antigen test, then do everything and then kind of sit back and go, is it or isn't it? This is another table that I've shown, it's stolen from the American guidelines, but it just illustrates nicely the differences between cats and dogs. And this is largely down to that immune response that cats mount. So dogs are highly susceptible. They're the natural host. Heartworm and dogs get on pretty well, and dogs don't tend to fight the disease very much, but cats do. So cats are susceptible to infection. You can infect cats pretty easily, but they fight, and that results in a different disease scenario. As a result of all that, dogs often get large burdens, but cats get fewer numbers that survive. Dogs, are tolerant of heartworm. Heartworms will live up to 7 years, but the cat's immune system fights it every inch of the way. So the poor old heartworm gives up after a few years. We've mentioned microfilaria, so it's common for dogs to have those circulating babies, but uncommon for cats. And just through sheer numbers in the infection, it's uncommon for dogs to have just one sex of heartworm, but common for cats. If you've only got sort of 2-3 heartworms in cats, then it's not rare for them to be all male or all female. In dogs, it's called heartworm, but really heartworm starts in the lungs and then migrates to the heart as the numbers increase and as they get bigger and get longer. But in cats, it's really a lung disease. It's not really a heart disease at all. Ectopic means infection sort of in places that they shouldn't be, and because cats aren't the natural host, then they're probably a bit more likely to see that in cats. Diagnosis we covered. It's pretty easy to find heartworm in dogs. It was there, but not in cats. There's no treatment. So with dogs, of course, there is an approved chemical that you administer to the dog to kill the adults, but if you do that in cats, you will kill the cat. So that's not a good idea. But for both species, it is highly preventable. There are products on the market for both species to prevent which. So because cats, are an issue, and because we make preventatives for both cats and dogs, Zoetis commissioned a group of experts to produce guidelines. So this is, they are largely founded on the American guidelines, but we felt that there were some significant differences between Australia and America. And so we did commission guidelines documents for both species, and I've just shown the image for the cat document here, but there are documents for prevention, treatment, and diagnosis for dogs as well. So there are 4 documents altogether. And some of the kind of key stuff that's in there is I mentioned that cats and dogs look different with heartworm. And I guess these are the clinical signs that have been described in cats with heartworm. And I think you sort of might think that it's all a bit, well, there's a wide variety of clinical signs, but also some of them are quite vague. Lethargy, anorexia, which means not eating very well, weight loss, vomiting, diarrhea, nothing, stuff that's not necessarily related to hearts specifically. So quite a number of cats, probably 10% of cats that are infected with heartworm are thought to just drop dead from sort of anaphylaxis. And you can see there's some pretty weird stuff like blindness and sneezing. Syncope just means collapse. Ataxia means staggering around. So nothing particularly sort of stand out-ish. So really sick cat syndrome. If you have a cat that you're kind of looking at and what the hell's wrong with that one, maybe heartworm should be investigated. And sorry about the gory pictures, but these pictures came from a study done some years ago to sort of try and illustrate the effect of the immune response in cats. And they did give these cats a lot of heartworm, so it's a bit exaggerated. But the bottom line is, this is what happens in cats with no heartworm. So these are normal lungs, and these are normal. This is sort of a microscope picture of the airways. So this is your lungs. So there's membranes in here, and then there's lots of air, as you can see. So lots of opportunity for oxygen to sort of cross these membranes and get into the blood. This group here, on the group 3, are cats that were infected with heartworm and then just let go with no intervention. And so adults developed and an immune response occurred. And you can see the lungs look pretty crappy. And you can see if this is an airway, then you'd hate to be breathing through that. That's a pretty, infiltrated microscope picture, lots of cells there, not much air. So all of these kind of fine membranes here have gone all thick and horrible and not very functional. Now these ones in the middle are cats where the heartworms were killed sort of midway through the process. So they did not develop into adult worms. So this is kind of the effect of the cat's immune response in fighting the worms and killing the heartworms before they turn into adults. So you don't, I guess the bottom line is you don't need adult worms to mature in a cat to have significant damage. And you can see there's not a lot of difference between these 2 pictures. So even though cats don't get adults very often, they still get damage from worms. And this is just another picture along the same line. So pulmonary arteriole, so these are blood vessels in the lungs, and this is normal, so you've got a nice sort of thin blood vessel wall there with a few red cells in there, and lots of room for the blood to get through, but you can see that these vessels are now really, really thickened, there's not much room, which is pretty horrible. And then again, this is the larger airways, so bronchioles, they're sort of your more structured airways, and lots of room there, but you know, in these pictures, lots and lots of thickening and inflammation occurring. So this is what happens in cancer. So I mentioned sort of prevalence before, and with all of those cases that have been recorded on our website are dog cases. And we didn't really have anyone out there looking for cat cases. If you talk to vets, even in areas where there's lots and lots of heartworm, and ask them, are you testing cats? They'll all kind of say, well, that's a good idea, but no, I'm not. So we kind of extrapolate a bit, and come up with a number that, perhaps the feline infection rate is somewhere between 5 and 20% of the dog infection rate, but it's all a bit difficult to gather. The good news for cats is that it's not an automatic death sentence. Half of cats that are infected will get better over a few years without any treatment. But I guess the bad news is that 10% of cats that do develop adult heartworms do drop dead. So when I was in practice, we used to blame sudden death in cats on us. Well, hit by car was the favourite one. The cat got run over, banged by a car, then it rushed off under the house and just quietly died overnight, and you found it dead in the morning, and that's what happened. Well, it might have happened, but could well have just died suddenly from heartworm, possibly. So I think heartworm perhaps explains sudden death in cats. So I guess given all that, the key recommendation out of that cat guidelines document that I showed you before is that, this is not rocket science and no great surprise, I suppose, is that as with dogs, the board, which, the panel, I guess, recommends that preventatives, chemoprophylaxis, the big word for prevention, in cats, cohabiting environments with dog infection should get treatment 12 months of the year. So, no great surprises there, but getting people to do it, I suppose, is a challenge. So, again, to try and sort of answer that question, well, how common is it, and is it out there? I'm in the middle of doing this study, which is happening in Mackay. Mackay is a real hotspot for heartworm in dogs. A big chunk of those positive dogs are coming out of Mackay. Is there anyone from Mackay here?
No, but we've had a couple of dogs come down from there that proved to be positive heartworm.
Yeah, if you get a dog from Mackay comes anywhere near you, test it for heartworm. And Mackay is a bit of a Hurricane Katrina kind of thing happening with Mackay. That I get calls from all over the country for vets, with positive cases for heartworm, and they want advice. What do I do? And so I often say, well, is this a local dog? Oh no, it's come from Mackay. But of course, those dogs from Mackay, often microfilaria positive, so they can be moving to wherever, and mozzies locally will bite them and happily spread the disease. So at the moment, we're in the middle of this study. It's early days. We haven't found any positive cats yet. We're looking at antigen testing and antibody testing. It's a bit challenging to get people to submit to post-mortem testing. So we're going with what we can do, so we've not diagnosed one yet, but we're in the process of. When I sort of agreed to do this talk, as with most studies, I thought it would be all done and dusted by now. It's not for me to shut up, and that I'd give you the final results, but that hasn't happened. But it's underway. So that's it. So.